All right. So we left off, again, talking about some cases of Phrygian sense and how it works. So I want to be very clear on some points about Phrygian senses. First, senses are, or they express or capture, a mode of presentation. They give you something like a description that picks out the referent. Again, if we go back a slide, it's that determination relationship here. The mode of presentation that's expressed or captured is the thing that then picks out the object. It's like the grabber arm that goes out and grabs the thing. Importantly, they are public. They're not ideas. They're not subjective. They're abstract objects that all of us can be related to. And because all of us can be related to them, we avoid the problem that we talked about with the ideal conception of language. Because the ideal conception's problem was no way to communicate the ideas. Here, we put those out in the world. Not in the concrete, kickable world, but in the abstract realm. That's the trick. Effectively, Frege is taking this sort of middleman out of our heads and putting it in Plato's head. But they're not ideas. They're not subjective. They are instead these things, these Platonic objects that our words relate to, that then determine the reference.
Are they only the same for all people who've actually seen Bucephalus, or is it just that we all agree on what brown is?
Everybody. Right? The sense then is going to be out there in the world. Now there's a question about how is it that a particular word, a sound, gets connected up to a sense. But that's beyond the kind of thing that he's after here, right? So there's a question about how we would learn language and things like this. But he's just interested in when it works, how does it work? Notably, senses are... Yeah, please, sorry.
Do you mean like human senses, or is it like human sense like something
No.
different?
So it's a sense in the sense, very technical term.
Okay, so not our human senses.
The slide I had at the beginning of the section, that was a bad pun.
Okay.
We can really plug in here what he's saying is there's something like a Platonic form that's being expressed. And that Platonic form encodes a description that then denotes the object, that determines the referent. Yeah?
So are these senses then not material?
They are in the third realm.
They're kind of public ideas.
Yeah, kind of public ideas. But we don't want to call them ideas, because according to Frege, when we think of ideas, ideas are always subjective. They are had by someone. And the problem is that my idea, my subjective conception, is mine. And it'll be distinct from yours. So that's not something public that we could mean the same thing with. That's why he doesn't want them to be ideas. Those are too subjective. So when I say they're in the third realm, or when Frege says they're in the third realm, again, unfortunate framing, right? The first realm is going to be the realm of the physical, the concrete. The second is the subjective, the ideals, the idealistic. The third is the Platonic, the abstract. It is immutable, it is non-concrete, but it's not subjective. That's where senses are. And again, if you find you're struggling with the word senses, plug in something else, right? It is this sort of form that is expressed. Yes?
What about one sign that has multiple references?
Nice. So when you say that, do you mean like a general term?
Yeah, like a proper name. For example, I know multiple Nathans,
Sure.
but they
Cool.
refer to a different person.
So what he's going to say is that this is a problem with everyday language. In fact, what you have is Nathan subscript 1, Nathan subscript 2, Nathan subscript 3. Every one of those expresses a particular sense, which then determines the particular reference that it picks out. There isn't one name with multiple senses. There's a bunch of homonyms, words that sound exactly the same, but mean something different. Yeah?
Maybe it's useful for us, since we're Dutch and close to German. What is the word Frege uses for sense?
Ah, shit. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry. But we can look it up. If anybody's got the SEP page for Frege, you can find it really quickly. Right. And he also, when I say reference, he doesn't actually use the word referent. I don't remember. I used to have this off the tip of my tongue. But anyway, okay. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. So again, sense is here, this in this technical term, right? It's not the touchy-feely stuff. It's these weird intermediate objects, things. They capture modes of presentation. They're public. They are what we mean when we say meaning. When we talk about the meaning of a word, what we're actually saying is, what sense does it express? They're unambiguous. So again, kind of coming back to the question we just had. The sense of Nathan is going to be specific. It will pick out exactly one object. The words can be ambiguous. We'll need to distinguish. Did you mean Nathan subscript 1, or 2, or 3, or 4? Which sense were you trying to track? If a word is meaningful and unambiguous, it will have one sense. It can be meaningful and have multiple senses. What we really mean here is, again, there's a personification. It's like the Nathan case. Which one were you intending? Okay? Yes, please.
If I'm not mistaken, Frege derives the word sense from, as we said, sin.
Yeah.
Sin.
Sin and reference, that's what it is.
So if I put that in how we use language and how we derive metaphors and stuff,
Yeah.
Can we say it's literally in the sense of?
Yeah. It is another way, it is another way to kind of capture the expression of mode of presentation, right? It is the sense of the word, right? It's something like how the word presents what's out there. That is the thought here.
Thank you.
This is one of the joys of philosophy of language, is that terminology here is a minefield. We are, in like a slide, I'm going to talk to you about thoughts. Phrygian thoughts. Phrygian thoughts are not the kinds of things that happen in your head. Thought here is a technical term, much like sense is a technical term. So just something to kind of keep in mind. We'll try and keep that as clear as possible. If it's not, ask, right? Try and be clear. Cool. Okay. So other things about senses. They determine reference. We said that already. Importantly, reference does not determine sense. It doesn't work the other way around. This means two expressions can have the same referent, but differ in sense. Again, Batman, Bruce Wayne, Robert Zimmerman, Bob Dylan. This is the big key move. Right? You can have that W shape. By having an extra thing here, we can explain the cognitive significance. Interestingly, you can also have a sense without a referent. A word can be meaningful, though it fails to denote anything. How might that be useful? Remember two of the puzzles we talked about earlier. Both hinged on having empty names. Names that were meaningful, but failed to refer. You can already see what Frege's answer is going to be. Importantly, though, you could never have a referent without a sense. There's no way to do that. A word can't just magically lock on to an object. It always needs to go via a mode of presentation.
Can't you simply point at something?
Nice. But note here what we're doing is something like an act of denotation.
That is a sense.
Yeah. What we're doing is via the act getting at the mode of presentation, that thing that we're denoting. Right? And importantly, there's a sense in which the that or this or dit or that, right, doesn't actually mean that object. We're trying to focus attention on the object. The meaning of a pronoun like that is very flexible. It's a kind of function. Good question. Okay. So far, okay. Again, we're building them up. This is a wonderful, wonderful conception of language. It's a shame it's probably wrong. So here's the really cool thing. Remember, everything we were doing, we talked about this, was just about proper names. But we can easily start to extend this. Definite descriptions, easy. Definite descriptions are just going to work like proper names, but it's just going to make the mode of presentation pretty explicit. What about predicates? Is a horse. Right? Take the predicate, is a horse. What does it pick out? Well, it's going to express a sense, because every bit of language is going to have a sense. But the reference here isn't an object, it's going to be something like an extension, a set, a collection. You remember predicates from FOL? This is from our logic class a few years ago, right? The meaning of a predicate in first order logic was the objects it applies to. Same thing for Frege. The meaning of a predicate for Frege is the collection of objects that satisfy the predicate. Is a horse means these things that are all the horses. The sense, Frege calls a concept. Again, technical term, it's his use of the word concept. It isn't like the kind of concept we usually talk about. They're not mental, they're not subjective. But this is just for completion's sake. We're not really going to talk about this. The more interesting one is this. According to Frege, complete sentences will also have senses. The sense of a sentence is made up of the senses of its constituent parts. It's easier than you think. Right? So take this. Take Bucephalus is a horse, right? Or Socrates is a man. That sentence, the sense of that sentence is going to be made up of the sense of the word Socrates and the sense of the predicate is a man. You just sort of take those two, jam them together in that order, and you get the sense of the sentence. Frege calls this a thought. Now again, this is a technical term. This isn't like the thing that we have, hopefully while you're listening, or what I'm having as I'm talking. Right? This is a Fregean thought. It is just yet another thing out there in the Platonic realm. It is a fusion, if you like, of Platonic atoms. Right? Yeah, exactly. Woo! So thoughts are, again, just complex senses that correspond to the structures of their sentences. Socrates is a man. Sense of Socrates, sense of is a man. Bucephalus is a horse. Sense of Bucephalus, sense of is a horse. Pen, pineapple, apple pen. The fact that that is even meaningful is exactly the kind of thing that It would make him smile, except he would hate it because, again, racist, but still. Here's the weird thing, on top of many weird things. The referent of a sentence is its truth value. Socrates is a man, has a sense, that is, it expresses a Phrygian thought, and it has a referent. Its referent is the true. Bucephalus is a man, expresses a Phrygian thought, it has a sense, and it has a reference, the false. What this means is that sentences for Frege are just really weird proper names. They're really weird proper names for true and false. I know that's weird. What it means, though, is that he can explain why there's a difference between when you get the sentence and sentence is true. Because that sentence is true is yet another instance of an identity claim. And it's an informative identity claim because this sentence is a mode of presentation for truth. It's clever. Again, we're not going to worry about this too much, but I want to put this out because this is an interesting part of his view. The thing that matters for us, what's important, is that we know his story about proper names. We understand what Phrygian senses are and how they are meant to fill in the space between the word and the thing referred to. Okay. So let's come back to the problems we talked about earlier. Frege's story is going to solve all of them. And Frege is going to be able to solve them because he has more to work with. He's not just stuck with the word and the referent, he's got the sense to play the role. So remember our 4 problems, right? Talked about it at the top of the lecture. So we're going to go through them in slightly different order. We're going to start with Frege's puzzle because, hey, it's his puzzle. He gets to go first. It's his party. Here's an interesting version of Frege's puzzle. Calvin Codazar Rodacius Jr. is the same person. How many people knew that?
Waarom weet jij dat man? Ik weet het alleen maar van toen er slechts zijn examples he gave in logic.
Yeah.
First year. So, I don't know these fucking musicians.
So, again, what's interesting, whether we learn something or not, it looks like at least you could have learned something. Right? And how? Frege can explain it. Frege can explain it because what you're learning is that 2 different modes of presentation pick out the same object. It's the same thing with Zimmerman and Dylan. That's the beautiful trick. Frege can solve his own puzzle because he has the sense to do the job, to explain the difference. It's a different mode of presentation, even though they're modes of presenting the very same object. Nice. So Frege can solve his own puzzle. Shocking. What about reference to non-existence? Remember I talked about Holmes as a detective. Very hard to make even sense of that if there ain't no Holmes. Frege's got an answer. When we say things like Holmes as a detective, or his example is Odysseus was set ashore at Ithaca while sound asleep, because pretentiousness. Right? Let's just go with Holmes as a detective. Well, Holmes is going to lack a referent. There is no Sherlock Holmes. But it's still meaningful because it expresses a Phrygian sense. So Holmes as a detective is meaningful. But according to Frege, it is neither true nor false. It's meaningful, which was the original puzzle. Right? The puzzle wasn't how does it come out true or how does it come out false. It was just how can this even turn out to be meaningful?
But you just said that the reference of sentences is actually its truth value. So it still then refers to.
It refers to nothing. So it has a thought, right? And the thought is the combination of the sense of Holmes and is a detective. But when it goes out and kind of looks for the things to refer to, the constituent senses fail to find anything. So then it fails to grab the true or the false. It just doesn't have a truth value. So Holmes as a detective is neither true nor false, but it's still meaningful. Which is a game. Because remember, the Million View couldn't even tell us how it was meaningful, let alone having a truth value.
I'm a bit puzzled because I would say that Holmes is a lawyer is false and Holmes is a detective is true.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's something funny here. And this is actually, ironically, one of the topics we might be able to talk about for lectures 10 and 11.
Okay.
Because there seems to be something like an embedded in the fiction operator there, right? It's true in the Holmes fictions that he's a detective. And it's not true in the Holmes fictions that he's a dentist or a lawyer or whatever you like. But again, if you don't like the example, just replace it with whatever you want.
Yeah. It seems to me that the fact whether there is a material object out there somewhere is not too relevant for the truth value of the.
Or abstract object, right? There's just nothing.
Yeah.
If there's any term that doesn't pick out something, we can run this argument.
No.
So we can solve this apparent reference. It's meaningful, but there is no such thing. Same thing with negative existentials, right? Holmes doesn't exist. Odysseus doesn't exist. This is just a roundabout way of saying the predicate is Holmes or is Odysseus doesn't have an extension. Don't worry too much about this one. What's important, or interesting maybe, let's put it better, interesting, is that Frege says the fact that we even have this is a byproduct of us using natural language. An ideal language would never have these and would never have those because we would never have any need. An ideal language would have no empty proper names. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. People still feel the need to talk about it, right? So there's some kind of need for it.
Yeah, and I mean, Frege's move would be to say, sure, people do. But that's because we're not speaking an ideal language. In the ideal language, the kind of best possible language that we could construct, empty terms simply never occur. You can get it if you think about, again, to return to something like first order logic, remember a stipulation we had there. Whenever we had a name in logic, could we have an empty name? When we're doing FOL, could we have an empty name? Do you remember? It was built into FOL, our first order logic system. You could not have any empty names. It was just verboten.
I would call that a shortcoming of FOL, not of natural language.
Yeah, but importantly, Frege wants to notice that, like Toland's that pony. He wants to say, that's just our natural language misleading us. We think that this is meaningful and true, but we are mistaken. Yeah.
I'm a bit confused on the difference between the reference to non-existence and the negative existentials.
Good. So they're really closely related. The first one is kind of claims like, oh, Holmes is a detective, right? Which might be true or false, or maybe nothing. Negative existentials are when we say, this thing doesn't exist, right? So there's a particular kind of claim. It uses a non-existent, but it is the sentence that asserts they're not there. It's a subtype of the first one. It's a good question. Right? Nice. Okay. So again, Frege's solution to these two both hinge on the fact that he says words can have senses or express senses even though they don't refer. The last puzzle, which was really close to the Frege's puzzle, great. The last puzzle was about substitution, right? And this was, again, basically we're replacing a name inside a belief context. And it seems to change the truth value of the belief claim. Okay. So, Amanda believes Dylan is a singer. True. Amanda believes Zimmerman is a singer. Well, actually, that's true. We can imagine it's false. How can those differ in truth value when all that we've changed is just how we're labeling the object? Answer. Believes that. The thing that Amanda believes is a sentence. Believes Dylan is a singer. Believes Zimmerman is a singer. What's happening is that the embedded sentence, the embedded clause, when it's embedded, no longer picks out its referent. Instead, it picks out its thought. So when we embed a sentence inside an operator like believes or knows or hopes, instead of picking out the truth value, it flips to picking out its usual thought, Fregean thought. Now, why would we want it to change from picking out its truth value to picking out its thought? Why do we want it to do that? What would be wrong with having it still just pick out its truth value?
Because then you can have a reference that has both a true and a false truth value at the same time.
I like the thought. Let's keep pushing. So remember again, the context. Right? We're embedding it inside something like believes that operator.
People can make mistakes.
People can make mistakes. Keep going.
It becomes subjective.
It could be that it becomes subjective. Yeah.
So you can believe something which is not true.
Not just not true. You can believe something that's neither true nor false. You can believe something that's neither true nor false. Right? You could believe something, a sentence that involves an empty name. Here's an easy example. Do people remember, maybe from philosophy of science, Vulcan? It was a planet postulated that was meant to be inside Mercury's orbit to explain perturbations of light from the sun. Turns out the actual explanation is relativity. But of course, people like Lavoisier believed Vulcan was a planet. We don't want it to be such that Lavoisier believed Vulcan was a planet comes out with no truth value. He did believe that. But if the reference in the end there is the truth value, remember what Frege says here, then that would come out to neither be true or false. So we need to play a trick. When we embed a sentence inside this kind of context, inside something like a believes that, or knows that, or thinks that, or hopes that, the sentence shifts, it twists. Instead of picking out a truth value, it picks out its usual thought. Because that's always there. The sentence is meaningful, even if it's neither true nor false. So we can protect things like blah, 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 believe something that's neither true nor false. Do we see the reason there? It's really lovely. It's very clever on Frege's part.
And that picks out, that's just a language feature then.
Yeah. So it's again, kind of what we're thinking of is its denotation, right? What it refers to is no longer the truth value, but it refers to the thought, the Phrygian thought. So they stand in a belief relation to that abstract object rather than to a truth value. No. Okay. Again, Frege's system here is wonderful. It is really amazing, and it's very rich, and it solves so many different problems. It's really clever. But of course, problems. So let's talk about some problems with it. And we can wrap up with this. No worries, we'll talk about Russell next week. Russell will go quick. One problem with Frege's system, with Frege's view, has to do with disagreement. And he actually talks about it in the paper. In fact, it's the second footnote in the paper, or at least in the version that we read. So he's talking about Aristotle, and I'm just going to read it because it's worth us thinking about, right? In the case of an actual proper name such as Aristotle, opinions as to the sense may differ. It might, for instance, be taken to be the following: the pupil of Plato, the teacher of Alexander the Great. Anybody who does this will attach another sense to the sentence, Aristotle was born in Stygia, then will a man who takes as the sense of the name, the teacher of Alexander the Great, who was born in Stygia. So long as the referent remains the same, such variations in sense may be tolerated, although they are to be avoided in the theoretical structure of a demonstrative science and ought not occur in a complete language. So, what's the problem? The problem here is basically something like the one that we had earlier with Nathan, but amped up, right? Because at least with the case of Nathan, right, we could say there's multiple references, so there'll be multiple senses. Here, we've got one reference, one word, and there's disagreement about what is the associated mode of presentation. How many of you knew that he was from Stygia, right? That he's from Macedonia? Cool, right?
I knew the first, but not the second.
Yeah, that's okay. Importantly, note here, the problem isn't an issue about like, hey, we learned something with different names. So we're not sure about what mode of presentation even is in the sense of the name itself. Now, why is that a problem? The problem now is it looks like we can run a version of Frege's puzzle with Aristotle as Aristotle. That's bad, because Aristotle as Aristotle was supposed to be trivial, cheap. So this disagreement isn't just, hey, we don't know, but it's that we might have fundamentally different modes of presentation associated with the term. And this is an issue. Do we see the problem? Does it make sense? I gotta stop saying, does it make sense? No. Okay. No, that's okay. It's okay. So think about it where we... Yeah.
Well, yeah, I see the problem, but it's not very deep, is it? So once you come in disagreement, you have to be more precise. What I mean with Aristotle this, and you mean that, and then you can resolve it.
We can. But remember here, that sounds an awful lot like there's an extra thing. We agree on the thing. We thought we agreed on the meaning of the term because we even get to the same reference. Oh, but we disagree about the meaning of the term. Okay, so when we were talking, it wasn't just the senses, but we had kind of like a mode of presentation for the modes of presentation. Oh no. Okay. We disagreed about the mode of presentations associated. So I thought it was presenting the mode this way. You thought it was presenting the mode that way. We could have disagreements about those modes of presenting. Just keep going. Yeah.
So the problem is then that the sentence Aristotle is Aristotle is no longer necessarily true, or?
Well, it's not necessarily, it's not about its truth value, but it's that it might turn out to be informative. And how in the world could that be cognitively significant? It is the trivialist of trivialities that A equals A. That can't teach us anything, but apparently it can. Again, this isn't the worst problem in the world, but it starts to open the floodgates. Here's the second problem. Frege is very happy to just accept that there's going to be a bunch of sentences that are neither true nor false. But this is kind of weird, because take the following, right? The present king of France is bald. According to Frege, this is neither true nor false. Right? The present king of France doesn't pick anything out, so this does not have a truth value. It's meaningful, but it's neither true nor false. Okay? Well, here's something weird then. What about that sentence? It's not the case that the present king of France is bald. It feels like it should be true. It's not the case that he's bald. In fact, we can strengthen it. I could say, it's not the case that he's bald because he doesn't exist. That looks like a good explanation for why this is not true. But of course, that can't be right. This sentence 2 cannot be true. Because if the sentence 2 is true, then that sentence is false. Similarly, this cannot be true or false. It's not the case that it's not the case that the present king of France is bald. Again, we're playing around here with negations. Don't stress too much.
No, I was thinking, is the implication here that the third sentence, number 3, can't have a truth expression because the original sentence is empty?
Yeah.
Doesn't have a truth
Yeah.
value or something.
Doesn't have a truth value.
Yeah, then it can't. Yeah.
Other ones too. Grass is green or the present king of France is bald. Neither true nor false. If the present king of France is bald, then we're all here right now. Neither true nor false.
To be sure, the intuition is that 2 is true.
2
Right?
is true.
But you can easily resolve this by saying that 2 also has an empty truth value.
That's the way to go. But again, then we say, okay, to strengthen it, it's not the case that the present king of France is bald because he doesn't exist. That looks like a good, true because claim. But that requires that then that have a truth value.
Does it seem to be?
I think so. I mean, again, this is one of the things we can push back on, right? If we dig in, we can just say like, no, I think, yeah, we can just keep going. It's just neither true nor false, right? And that's a way to go. But note that what we're getting here is just a little push. It's a little push. We're going to have to buy into some funny things. And again, we might also go, if you don't like these ones, other embeddings. Again, take the or case, or the conditional case, right? In all of those cases, the complex sentences can neither be true or false. If the present king of France is bald, then France has a king. That's neither true nor false. Again, you sort of see how this goes. We can play around. Here's the really bad one. Here's the really bad one. This is from, I forget his first name. Mates is his surname. Scott, I think, I forget. Mates' puzzle. Mates' puzzle is that we can have synonyms, words that mean the same thing that people don't know are synonyms. Now it's worth emphasizing When we say synonyms, using it in the sense defined here, not words that pick out the same thing, not code-denoting names, words that mean the same thing. According to Frege, if they mean the same thing, they express the very same sense. Problem. You can learn two words are synonyms. Finding out that two words are synonyms can be cognitively valuable or significant. Why is that a problem? It is a version of Frege's puzzle for senses. Senses were the things that were supposed to help us solve Frege's puzzle. So again, how does it work? If I believe that something is ketchup, then it's trivial that I believe that something is ketchup. If ketchup and catsup, which is just a literal difference in spelling, are synonyms, which they are, there should be no way for something like this substitution puzzle to go through. But it can. Because how many of you knew that ketchup and catsup were synonyms in English? If you don't like this example, pick any other instance of a synonym that you like. So again, what's the problem? The problem is, to put it bluntly, senses were supposed to explain how we could how we could have something like cognitive significance when we learn co-identifications. Right? Batman is Bruce Wayne. Robert Zimmerman is Bob Dylan. Cool. So let's think about the meanings of expressions. We can learn that two expressions mean the same thing. That shouldn't be possible. Because that is just saying we've learned that two expressions have the very same sense. But we can still do substitution puzzles with them. And the senses, the difference in senses, is how we were supposed to explain why these substitution puzzles happen. There is no difference in sense. So this can't happen. That's the problem. That's bad. That's bad. Why is it bad? Because again, the tool that is supposed to solve the puzzle, we can run a version of the puzzle on it. Which sucks. I mean, again, it's such a beautiful system. Here's how we fix it, if we want to try. It comes back to something we said earlier. We just simply have modes of presentation for modes of presentation. And then modes of presentation for modes of presentation for modes of presentation. And forgive me if I stop there. But here's something kind of neat. If you already buy into a Platonic heaven, if you think that you're going to lean into abstract objects to do the role, why not just go absolutely abundant with the abstract objects? We'll have an infinite number of abstract objects, all of which get involved here. One joy here is, of course, that makes learning language really interesting. But again, I hope we can kind of see the structure of the problem. It's a fascinating one. And that's okay. So, that's Frege. It is a wonderful, amazing system. It solves these problems, and then it walks into a kind of funny buzzsaw. And it's really hard to see how to solve. But that's okay. So, here's what we're going to do. We're running out of time. What we'll do next week We'll talk about Russell's descriptivism and go through it, because it's not really long. This is pretty short. And then we'll talk about the causal theory of reference. So the causal theory is another attempt to make sense of the meaning of proper names. It's not Millianism, but it's kind of a mode of presentation of Millianism. So what I'll ask you to do, please read part of Lecture 2 from Kripke's Naming and Necessity. You should be able to get it via the syllabus. Let me know if you can't. And what we'll do, we'll talk about the Russell stuff, and we'll talk about the Kripke stuff next week, next Friday. Cool? Thanks for coming, guys. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you all next Friday.